Hosted by Mike, the Big Cheese.
Welcome back, my warriors of metal, to our 15-year anniversary show. I cannot believe it's been that long already. That's, I like to say, a quarter of my lifespan so far dedicated to doing this show, and I've had a great time with it every single weekend. Thank you for joining me tonight. I think tonight's guests don't need any introduction. Adrian Vandenberg of Vandenberg and Whitesnake, and the metal meister himself, U.D.O. Dirkschnieder of U.D.O. and Accept, or U.D.O. as the band is called. We get to both of those interviews sometime during the course of tonight's show. And like I said, I just want to thank everybody who's always been a part of this show and helping me out with it and listening every week. And John and Iman are always in the chat room every Sunday with me, keeping me company. I want to thank those guys. We'll get to more of that later on in the show. But right there, Tyrant, Warriors of Metal. What a great way to kick things off tonight. I know Warrior is in between, Tyrant is in between singers right now. It would be great if Greg and Glenn could kind of patch things up and get him back in the band on vocals again. I was lucky enough to see them in Manhattan at some real small club. They played with October 31st and some other band. It was the night before one of the Defenders of Old Metal festivals. I think that one was in Baltimore at that time. And they flew into New York. They did a show. I got to hang out with the band. I took them all over to the World Trade Center. They wanted to see Ground Zero, which is tomorrow, September 11th. We went there, we went to the memorial, we went to go see the site. It really wasn't even built up yet at that time. They were still constructing it. So that's how far back it goes. But it was great being with the guys that night. All right, we're going to keep the music flowing here until we get to Adrian Vandenberg in about a half hour. How about we do a little, how about some Death Dealer? I don't remember the last time I played them on the show, but let's get that on right now. Also, I want to go to the show's had about 6 different intros since I started doing it. Tommy wrote the last one about 8 or 9 years ago, and we've kept that since then. We'll never get rid of it because Tommy wrote it himself and, recorded it with a few of our friends. So, maybe during the course of tonight's show, I'll play a little bit of the old intros that we had. There were like 5 or 6 of them over the last 15 years. So maybe we'll get to them to kill some time in between things. All right, let me go dig up Death Dealer right now. I know I got them on here somewhere. Where I put them is beyond me, but we'll get them on here. It's Crossed My Way. Trauma, we are watching you. And they were thinking 1994 is the future. My God. We passed that by a lot of years, but their song was written in the early 80s, so there you go. Donnie Hiller, we had on the show a couple of times. I had found Donnie on the internet, before Trauma had gotten back together. And then right after that, they started working on remastering that first record. Donnie was a sweetheart of a guy. He passed away a few years ago. I think it was 2 or 3 times we had Donnie on the show. It was always fun talking to him. Too many of the guests we've had on over the years have passed away. That's a shame. But the first show we did, I think, was September 13th or 14th of 2008. And it got started with Tommy, who found that old website we used to do the show on called Blog Talk Radio. He had a show called Metalheads United. He did it one time. He called me up. He's like, Mike, you're calling on your phone. You could do a show on the internet. We could play like all the old music from the 80s, and we could talk and have a good time. And, with Tommy being Tommy, we did it one time. And I kept saying, when are we going to do it again? And like a month went by. And, Tommy, getting him to do anything is like impossible. He's my best friend, and I love him with all my heart, but he's a procrastinator. So we never did any more. So I reached out to him. I said, listen, I want to keep doing this, so I'm going to start my own show if you don't mind. Then I was playing Jag Panzer, and there's a line of the song that has Heavy Metal Mayhem in it, and that's why it became the Heavy Metal Mayhem radio show. And that's where the name came from a Jag Panzer tune. And we did our first show that day, and I think it was 15 minutes long because I couldn't figure out how to use the switchboard. And I think a couple of days later, we did another one, which was a half hour long. And then for the first few months, the shows were a half hour long. And then I started doing the Metal Matinee. It was a theme show because I was trying to get better, figuring out how to use the equipment, talking. It's a weird thing when you have a headset on and you're talking into a microphone and you don't see anybody. There's no one there that you're talking to. You don't know if anybody's listening to you, if anybody hears you. It's a weird feeling at first. So it took me a while to get used to it. So I started doing the Metal Matinee on a Wednesday. And I said, we'll do a theme show. Every week we'll come up with a theme. We'll play songs based around that theme. And we did the Metal Matinee probably for 8 or 9 years. And then I think we did 400 shows of that. And I just ran out of ideas. Plus I was getting really busy at work, and I just couldn't do the 2 shows a week anymore. So we just went to the Sunday show. And by that time, the Sunday show had expanded to 2 hours because that was all we were allowed to do on Blog Talk Radio. With 2-hour shows. Then they made me like a premiere host, and they gave me an extra hour. So we were, a few times here and there we ran a little late, but not too many. We pretty much kept it to 2 hours over all the years. And in the very beginning, I tried to make it as professional as I could, even though I'm a guy from Brooklyn with a heavy accent, and I talk a million miles an hour. I just wanted to sound, as professional as I could. And Blog Talk Radio was like an AM radio sound. It was like a transistor radio sound. It had the worst sound quality in the world because it was really meant for talk radio. It wasn't meant for music, but we used it for that for a very long time. And then the price just got out of hand. They stopped the revenue sharing, but I was able to make a little bit of money from advertisement, like to help pay for the show. And then I just said, what the hell with it. And we just stopped doing the show together because I got kind of burnt out and needed a break. And for about a year and a half, we just did interviews. We put them up on YouTube before I decided to come back here and Spreak and do the show almost 2 years ago. But when I first started doing the show, I wanted to have like an intro. And I didn't know how to go about doing it, so I remember it was Valley of the Dolls by Hallows Eve. It was a little short instrumental. I used to use that to open up the show and then try to jump in with a song at the very end to make it look like it was flown into it. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but I found this guy named Chuck Bennett. He was a professional voiceover artist who did a lot of TV shows and cartoons and movies and stuff like that. And for like $25, he made me an intro. I said, use anything from rock and heavy metal, and he came up with an intro for me for this. So maybe we'll play that one. He used an old Iron Maiden song. And this was the first intro that we ever had on the show, a professional one, I should say.
The best heavy metal anywhere. BlogTalkRadio.com and Heavy Metal Mayhem.
Well, you kind of get the idea. That was our first intro. So we're going to go reminiscing down, memory alley tonight, playing a lot of stuff, throwing out a lot of stats, talking about a lot of guests that we've had on over the years. and that'll be where we're going with this. But in case you haven't heard, Matt Vincey, the bass player for Liege Lord, passed away this past week. Young guy in his 50s. It has been announced what he died of, and it's really nobody's business but his and his family's. But Liege Lord was supposed to play this festival in Mexico this weekend. Probably pronouncing it wrong, a Candelabrum or Candelabrum or something was the name of it. And they had backed out in July. And probably because Matt was sick and they knew it and they just couldn't do the show. But the replacement was Agent Steel. If you remember about a month or so ago, I kept saying, Agent Steel has some festivals coming up this fall and next spring and a small tour. Let's see if they, how it goes. I doubt they'll play any of them. And naturally, Agent Steel canceled their appearance at the festival last week, right before the show was supposed to take place. And, they're using the old standby one. A family member was sick and family comes first. That seems to be the new creed for bands canceling shows. There was a sick family member, and I get that. If you have a family, you got to take care of them. I understand that. This isn't like, when you're in Judas Priest or Iron Maiden, you got a lot going on, a lot of people, you can't cancel shows. But that just seems to be an excuse all bands are using, and Agent Steel canceled for another reason. I mean, 3 out of the 5 members of the band just joined within the last few months, so maybe they're missing members again. I have no idea, but there's another show. I think there's like a whole week of shows coming up over in Northern Europe in October, so I want to see if that actually goes through or happens. If not, Hell's Heroes next year, I better cancel them ahead of time because they will probably not show up, and they're definitely going to screw them over. But saying that, let's do a little Liege Lord in tribute to Matt. Matt and Tony were the last 2 original members of the band. I don't know if Tony's going to keep it going anymore. I mean, Joe Como has been singing with the band since the 3rd record. He's been in the band since the 80s. I don't know what's going to happen with the band, but I'm going to reach out to Tony in a few weeks, maybe get him on the show if I can. The last time I saw him was at the Defenders of All Fest in Brooklyn, and they were working on new music back then, and that was 10 years ago. We haven't gotten anything, so let's see what happens. So a good man passed away from a great band. I always felt this band, Freedom, the first record, Freedom Rise, is definitely one of my favorite records of all time. In my top 5, I felt this band should have been huge. They could have been the next Iron Maiden. They were just on a bad record label that didn't promote them at the time, and things just didn't happen. But that's the business, right? So this is for Matt. Do a couple of Liege Lord back to back. Wield an iron fist.
Time is rival and hand. Into the line we must now.
and that is one of the greatest heavy metal songs of all time. Leisure Lord, Rage of Angels, rest in peace, Matt. There was a concert video on YouTube years and years ago. I saw it. It's probably still up there. Of Leisure Lord playing at Lemoore in Brooklyn from 1985. I think it was like 2 or 3 parts. Whoever uploaded it put it up that way. Up in the front of the stage, I think it was on the right side. You could see me and my friend Eddie, who went to like every show at Lemoore back in the day. He had a white cut-off T-shirt, so I don't remember what side of the stage he was on. But I'm the little guy next to him, and they just blew. If you watch that video, even with the poor quality, because back then, there weren't cell phones that sounded like like TV recording equipment. We had big cameras back then with very poor audio quality sound, and you can still see how great Andy sounded on vocals singing that. So if you see the video up on YouTube, I'm in there somewhere. And I remember Dan Beeler, when I had Dan Beeler from Exciter on years and years ago, we were talking about one of the first shows we played at Lemoore that we were there. And he sent me a couple of pictures that he took from like behind the drum kit out into the audience, and I'm right there like 3 rows back in the center of the thing. He's like, "Here, take a look. Maybe you're in one of these pictures." And I was in actually one of them, and I have to look for that picture. I mean, I have so many computers over the last 15 years that have crashed. This is before I saved a lot of stuff. Like I just kept it on the computer, but I have to look and see if it's an old email that I saved. That was pretty cool. All right. When we did the show, like I said, we started doing like just playing music, and then we went to the Mel Matinee, like to do something with a theme to it. And I was getting bored after like 2 weeks of doing that. So I told Tommy, I said, we got to start like interviewing guests. And every now and then Tommy would come on and join me on the show. It was very rare in the beginning. So I remember hearing that Attacker were getting back together, and they were playing at Dingbatch in New Jersey. They had a new singer. And they were going to do this reunion show with the new, well, not a reunion show, but like the first show in many, many years with the new singer. And these were the days of MySpace. I found Attacker on MySpace. I reached out to Mike Sabatini. I said, "Why don't you come on the show? We'll do an interview." And made it sound like I had this big professional show and everything. It was like the third one I did, and Mike was the first guest. But back then, I mean, when we did interviews, they were the whole show long. And the show was about an hour long back then. And we spoke to Mike for the entire hour. We talked about everything. I was a big Attacker fan back in the early days of the group. So we spoke, and then Mike's like, "Come down to the show." And remember, the new singer's name was Walter Figueroa. He was a young kid. It just didn't work out. I mean, he was a good singer. He had a good voice, but it just wasn't, you could see like it just wasn't meshing up on stage. He was from a different generation, and it wasn't kind of clicking. But it was great to get to that show. And Mike was the first guest we had on the show. We've had Mike on here so many times since that point in time with other members of the band also. And I remember after that show, about a week later, Matt McCourt from the Wild Dogs reaches out to me on MySpace. He goes, "I heard that interview you did with Attacker." I didn't think anybody was even listening to the show at that time. I didn't think anybody was listening at all. He goes, "We played with those guys at one time, and I'm friendly with Mike, and I like to come on." And then we had Matt on the show like a week later. And after that, the show started in September, so we didn't have a lot of guests back then because it was kind of hard to find them and book them. But that first year, for those first few months, we had Matt on the show, then Tommy Stewart from Hallows Eve. We had Eric and Craig from Flotsam Jetsam on the show. Tony Potaro and Joe Cangelosi from Whiplash. Rob Cohen from Excite. He was a bass player in the band at that time when it was just John Ricci doing the band. And then we had Kenny Powell for Omen to close out the year of 2008. A great bunch of guests to get started with. And like I said, we had one guest on when we could. And on and off, we'd have a guest and go a couple weeks without one. It wasn't until I met the PR person from Frontier Records. He reached out to me and said, "I'd like to get my artist on your show." And, from that point on, I started working with him, and he went to a lot of different labels, and other people reached out to me. And like 90% of the interviews we do today all come through a record label, a PR person, a radio promotion company, and stuff like that, So people always ask, like, where do you get all these guests from? And, I'm just on the list for interviews. So when they come through town or they're promoting a record or a tour, they reach out to me, and, we set it up and we do the interviews. We try to do them all live if we can, but a lot of times there's interview days, and, artists do like maybe 9 or 10 interviews in a row, and you're just one of the people interviewing them. When we see a lot of the underground bands that are on here, like in the last few months, like Oblivion Night and Nick Fury, and Max Warrior, those are the bands that I reach out to personally. Like, they were like bands I was in love with back in the day. And as we learned this year, a lot of those bands really don't have much to say. So that's the bad part about it, You you remember these bands so fondly. Like, I remember getting that demo tape of that first record, and I loved it. I still play it till today. Then you talk to the band, and to them it was like a little blip on their radar. They put one record out, the band was together for a year or two, have nothing to really talk about or say. That's just a part of life. And people always say to me, like, what were your favorite interviews? What interviews were this? What interviews were that? And maybe we'll go through them today. I mean, I could tell you, like, the worst interview you ever did was with Ariel Lee. I mean, super nice guy. Really loved him. Talked to him. but it was a very boring interview. I mean, I could not get this guy to talk at all. I mean, he was. I don't remember the band he was promoting at the time. To be honest with you, I mean, it had been an old band that he was in. I can't even remember, but he just could not. This guy did not talk. I would ask him a question. He'd say, "Uh huh." Yeah, I think the interview lasted 10 minutes and I had to hang up with him. Then he called up later on to apologize because, like, he just didn't know what to do or say, and that does happen a lot, but that was probably the worst interview ever that we did. And, ones that surprised me the most were, I was set up to do an interview with Corky Lang from Mountain. Love, Mississippi Queen, but not the biggest Mountain fan. I know a lot about Mountain. We're a heavy metal show. But I got Corky on the show, and we interviewed him, and the interview went like an hour. And we had such a great time talking. He was so informative, and there were so many things, and it was such an easy conversation that even though, it's not typically what we would play on the show, Mountain, it was great talking to him. The same thing with Jeff O'Keefe, original member of St. Vitus. I had a band called Bedim, I think around the same time, right before St. Vitus. They were getting ready to re-release that early album. And I had him on the show. I'm like, I'm not the biggest St. Vitus fan, to be honest with you. And I don't even remember Bedim. I heard the name, but I don't remember any of the music. What a great guy to talk to. It was such a blast. That was another interview, like an hour long. So, sometimes the ones that you don't want to do, you think, like, what am I going to talk about? I'm not that involved with this band or what they're doing. They wind up being some of your best interviews. Okay. Let's get back to a little bit of music. Then we're going to have Adrian on the show. Tonight we're running 3 hours, so, we're going to get to the interviews a little later than normal. But we'll play something off the new Vandenberg in a little bit. But one of my all-time favorite bands from back in the day, Blessed Death. I remember seeing these guys at the Battle of the Bands at Lemoore. It was on a Thursday night. I think there were 3 bands I played every Thursday. And, like, you voted for each band by, cheering, screaming, and yelling. And then, like, one of those bands would make it to the next week, and then it kept going on like that till, like, one band won. And I don't remember if it was Blessed Death or Carnival. They were both 2 brand new bands playing at that time for the first time doing their first shows. I don't remember which one won the Battle of the Bands. But I remember meeting up with Blessed Death after the show, and these guys remind me of a band out of Deliverance back in the day. A bunch of rednecks from New Jersey, but super nice guys. And, I see I can videotape you guys, and I got a big camera. I didn't have nothing at the time. I just wanted to be a part of what they were doing. And I went to my local video store. I rented all this camera equipment. I spent a week trying to figure out how to use it. I went down to Lemoore with the camera. They got me in, backstage. I was like so thrilled, like this 17-year-old kid going backstage at Lemoore and then hanging out with the band. And I videotaped them, and they sent that video off to Megaforce Records at Johnny Z. And Johnny Z signed the band. I remember when the record came out, they gave me a big thank you on the bottom. And I was so thrilled, like this kid, like to have his name on a record album. I was like, holy cow. I still got that record in a frame up on my wall in the studio right now. So here you go, a little Blessed Death, Omen of Fate. The song was written after the band was involved in a car accident, and the car flipped over, and they didn't know if they were going to live or die. And then remember, Merciful Fate was playing on the radio, and that kind of got them out of the car. So the song is written about Merciful Fate. Sacred Blade with Legacy. I think all the main members of that band have passed away over the last 10 years or so. There's nobody left, and I always wanted to have them on here, but it just didn't happen. The same thing, I remember we had Rudy Sarzo on the show. We had Rudy on here a couple of times promoting different things, but he wrote a book called Off the Rails, and he was doing promotion for the book. And Rudy has an eidetic memory, if I'm saying the word right. He could things can happen, 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, and he can remember detail by detail. Mary Lou Henner from Taxi also is the same way. She can remember details to the minute, right down to the very minute part of it from like decades ago. And Rudy is a great interview because he can remember everything. You could ask him questions about anything, and he can answer them. And he's just a real sweetheart of a guy on top of that. And when he was doing the interview with me that day, he was on the show live, and he was getting ready to rehearse. He was in U.D.O at the time, and they were getting ready to rehearse. So, he was like, Ronnie just came in. He goes, "Do you want to talk to Ronnie?" And I was like, "Yeah, I would love to talk to Ronnie." And I felt funny saying that because I wanted to make him think, whenever I had guests on the show, I want them to feel special. Like, it's only them, not because they were in a band with somebody else. And Rudy, come on, Rudy's from Quiet Riot, Ozzy, U.D.O, and so many other bands over the years. But I was like, "Yeah, I would love to talk to him." And he goes, "Right, he just stepped out for a minute to do something, and it never happened." And then about a year or so later, Ronnie passed away. So I would have loved to have at least said hello to Ronnie James Dio. There were only 2 or 3 people I really ever wanted to interview in the show that I never got on here, and Dio was one of them, and that will never happen. Any member of Merciful Faith in the original lineup I'd love to have on here. I tried with Kim Rose. I almost got him on the show, but it didn't happen. The same thing with Michael Dennett and Timmy Garber before he passed away. That didn't work out. So I got King Diamond left to keep trying to work on. Maybe we can make it happen. When they were playing, I think it was at the Mayhem Festival, when King Diamond was playing at the Mayhem Festival, I was able to get an interview with Andy LaRocque, but I really wanted to talk to King Diamond, but it didn't happen. But that's just the way things go, Those interviews I would have loved to have. We were talking about Ariel Lee before. Ariel Lee was promoting Wicked Sin. He was also in Savage Choir, another band that I was quite friendly with back in the day. Like I said, nice guy, just a bad interview. And things like that happen. And I think John had mentioned in the chat about Bob Kulick. We had Bruce on here. Bruce is a nice guy. I interviewed Bob once before, and Bob was really cool the first time. He was talking about the Sinatra record he put out. It was like a heavy metal record with all covers of Frank Sinatra music. Then I had him back on again a second time, and for some reason we kept getting disconnected. Now I know it wasn't my fault that time. Sometimes the studio, you lose the line, it happens, but this was on his end, and he got like real nasty with me because he kept getting disconnected. I had to keep calling up and starting over again. I was like, but I'm not doing it. I'll never be disrespectful to a guest while I'm interviewing them, but he was kind of a dick for doing that. And I hate to say because he passed away a couple of years ago, but that wasn't me. That was him. And shit like that happens sometimes. I mean, what are you gonna do? All right, let's get to about a year and a half after doing the Iron Maiden intro, I got tired of it. I called up Chuck. I said, "Chuck, pick another rock or metal song out of your bag of tricks and make me a new intro." So he came up with this one from AC/DC with Those Who Back the Rock. It was a little funny too, but he always did a good job, this guy. But I stick with the one Tommy did because it's really dedicated to us in the show. But here you go, our second intro.
The best heavy metal and hard rock anywhere. Live from Blog Talk Radio's multi-million-dollar broadcasting facilities, the Heavy Metal Mayhem Radio Show. With your host, Mike the Big Cheese.
All right, the multi-million-dollar recording studio was me in my me in my garage with a computer, but I loved it. Chuck was a fun guy, and he always had fun doing those things. All right, let's get to Adrian Vandenberg. Got a brand new record out, the second one in the last couple of years. COVID kind of put a damper on the last record, I think, but the new record, Sin, just came out. It's on the Mascot label. We'll play a song off of that, then go right to the interview with Adrian. Here's Standing Your Ground.
When I miss those city lights
Adrian. This is Mike. How are you?
Hey, Mike. I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, and I'm happy to talk to you today. I mean, it's hard to believe that 40 something years ago, a little kid rode his bike to a record store and found the single called Now I Need You More Than Ever by Teaser. And who would think 40 something years later, I still be listening to your
Man,
music and talking to you?
that's great. That's great to hear, man. I'm kind of in. I've got the same curse. I have to listen to my own music too, still. So it's all
Well,
it's all
listen,
good.
I'm happy that you're still putting out music, and I was thrilled when I heard that you're going to do Vandenberg again a couple of years ago, and now with the second record since putting it back together, Sin. I mean, it just keeps getting better and better, and that's kind of hard to say when you've put out the kind of music you have over all these years.
Well, it's great to hear. I wouldn't say extremely. Yeah, actually quite extremely self-critical for what I put out, and I suppose that's why I haven't really put out that many albums over the years because I also like to do other stuff, like my painting, for instance. But yeah, I'm really critical because I've always I'm still a fan like everybody, and whenever I pick up a record or I used to pick up a record that was disappointing, with 3 or 4 good songs on it, and the rest was filler. I always told myself I'm always going to try to do my best to avoid that syndrome because it's disappointing as a music lover, as a fan. You just wanna get the goods. So it's the responsibility of the musician that you try your best to deliver the goods. And yeah, I'm very proud of this album again. Um, Actually, I'm proud of all my albums basically because um, it should be a pretty shitty feeling if you're embarrassed about a couple of records that you made, or a couple of songs that you recorded, stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you kind of go back to the beginning of Vandenberg in '82, the first record comes out. I remember when it came out and seen, I'm like, that's the guy from Teaser. Because, back then there was no internet. There were only a couple of magazines here in America that really focused on hard rock or heavy metal. So you didn't really know, what was going on or who the bands were. But the record comes out, and a few months later, Burning Heart explodes. It's a top 40 song here. I mean, I don't think any band can want to ask for more than on the first record to have such a big hit. But after the song becomes a hit, does it put more pressure on you to kind of repeat that magic, or is it a curse or a blessing? I mean, I know it's probably a little bit of both, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's a bit of both, but in the end, I didn't feel any pressure because not really. Because I've always made music because I love making music, and in the words of Paul McCartney, I read years ago that he has the same thing. In the first place, I make a record to please myself, so to speak. I want to make a record that I want to play when I'm in the car, and I mean I've heard it a million times now, but I still play it in the car. But yeah, you want to make a record that you're proud of, and in that case, even if it doesn't do well or there's no hit single on it or something, you still made a great record. So you don't have to blame yourself for not trying, And it comes fortunately very naturally to me to come up with songs and big riffs, and I'm always bursting with ideas. So I'm very fortunate in that respect because, like I said earlier, I'm a huge rock fan still. I still play my Van Halen, AC/DC, Mountain, Cream, everything that's got loud guitars in it and that's played by musicians who know how to play. It's great for me.
I don't know if I read an interview or I saw a video that you were in where you were saying, people called me a guitar god early on. He goes, I thought I better start rehearsing because you never looked at yourself that way. I felt it like you were, you earned that title.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting that you mentioned it because my manager sent me one of the reviews today about that thing, about the exact thing, and again I thought, man, I better keep rehearsing, to live up to those expectations. But at the same time, that's not really why I play. I play because I can't stay away from my guitar. I'm looking at it right now, and I can't wait to pick it up again later this evening and play some. It's like my mom always told me too when I was a kid. whenever I was watching TV, that I always had a guitar in my lap, whether I was playing it or not. It was, she said, always said it's almost like a pet because I used to drag it around the house everywhere and pretty inseparable. And that's still the case, you know. I'm really fortunate because I know, you know, I've got several friends who don't really have a specific passion. You know, they have hobbies or something, but not passionate hobbies. And I think, you know, when you have a passionate hobby, you're really blessed because it can be anything. It doesn't have to be music. It can be cooking, which is one of my passions actually, but it can be carpenting. It could be like hiking or swimming or whatever. You know, if you do something with a passion, it enriches your life tremendously.
Absolutely. Have you ever felt that at a point in time you've lost the passion for music and you had to kind of step away from it because you're also an amazing artist and you know, you do artwork also. So, I mean, did music ever take a backseat to anything else because you felt like the passion for it wasn't there at that moment?
Not because of the passion, because that's always there, but because there's so little time to do all the stuff that I really enjoy doing, and that includes procrastination. You know, I also like to do nothing useful for a whole day, and then the day later that day or early the next morning, I get all kinds of ideas. So it's probably, you know, sometimes you got to give your mind a little rest, and it's an art form because in the Dutch tradition, you know, people are supposed to be busy all the time and to work all the time, and you're a lazy bastard if you don't, you know. But when I'm writing, I make really really long hours, and when I'm painting too, you know, like when I was working on this album, especially when I was recording, and the same goes for the painting. I often start at 10 in the morning, and I end up at 12 or 1 o'clock at night, and sometimes I even forget to eat, you know. I think, no, before I go eat, you know, I first want to finish this or that, and before I realize it, I forgot about it, you know. It's pretty funny, actually, but it's always been the same.
Yeah, you know they call you a guitar god, a guitar hero. Being a shredder is amazing. Like you have Yngwie and Richie Blackmore, so many other people out there that can really play the hell out of a guitar. But in the end, isn't it the songs that are more important than what you can do technically on the guitar? I mean, having a good song is more important than an amazing solo.
For me, it is, yeah, because when the song is to my liking, when it ends up, that's the first thing I start with. Usually, the feeling that it gives me to go into the solo, it basically takes me there, and I always try to make a little story within the story of the song, and to make it work with the song. And for me, it's never a platform to look what I can do, look what I can do, look at me, you know. I always when I jam with people like that, I always prefer to take a couple of steps back because I just want to play from the heart, and that's what I've done so far, and that well I will always keep doing that.
I'm glad for that. You know, I think of the early to mid '80s. You know, three great records in a row with Vandenberg, Heading for a Storm, and Alibi, and then you know the singer gets kicked out of the band. Things kind of fall apart. Next thing you know, you're in Whitesnake, and that was an amazing on and off run for so many years. And one of the things about Whitesnake is that the whole history is so convoluted because there were people in the videos that didn't play on the records, people that wrote the records like yourself that didn't get credit for playing live with them.
Yeah.
There was so much that went on back then, and I think about it. Does that happen because when the band becomes so big and such a profitable thing for the record labels, is it more like a machine where the key member of the band say, we have to keep moving on no matter who gets left behind, it doesn't matter. But as a songwriter, as a member of the band, how does that, you know, make you feel?
Well, the Slip of the Tongue album, that was very frustrating. On one hand, you know, I had basically to record. I would have recorded the guitars the way I record them on Sin and on the 2020 album, and I would have played them like that too. So you have the picture in mind when you're working on the songs. On the other hand, I mean, it took a couple of weeks for me to come to terms with it. To terms with it when I heard the final Steve Vai, the way he recorded it. At the same time, I thought, man, you know, it's also an honor that somebody of Steve's caliber plays the guitars on my songs. You know, that's how I started looking at it, and that's how I came to terms with it too. Um, but like I said, it took me a while, and but the great thing was then we started sharing the stage, and it was fantastic, because we're such different players. I always got on great with Steve, and I'm still in touch with him. We're still in touch with each other, actually. And whenever we meet each other, it's usually in Holland. But the next time I'm in LA, I'm definitely going to hang with Steve. And it's just great, In the end, there's many people in the music business who look at other musicians as competition. I never had that, I always thought, man, we're all making music, we're privileged because, with a bit of luck, you can make a living with making music. Well, that's living the dream in my opinion. Because I never thought, I taught art and art history at a high school for about a year and a half, and it was fine too with me. And I always thought, well, with the kind of rock that I want to play, forget it. You're always going to stay in Holland, and that's it, which was fine by me. But I was always hoping for a miracle because I love playing abroad. I love playing all over the world. You meet different people. The audiences react differently. I love playing in the States, because people are, so spontaneous and loud, and girls pulling up the T-shirts and all that stuff.
Yep.
It's all. It's, let me tell you, man, it doesn't happen in Switzerland.
God bless USA for that. We have this saying here, like, there's too many chiefs, not enough Indians. And going from Vandenberg, where you were the boss, you were the chief of that band, into Whitesnake, where David Coverdale is the main guy and the boss, is it hard to kind of like, step back a little bit and say, well, this is his band, this is his thing, I got to kind of go along for the ride. But you're also a guy who's in charge of his own band at one point in time and knows what has to be done also.
Yeah, that's why it worked so well between David and me, because he could rely on me with the experience I had as a band leader. And I was a fan of David from the moment that he joined Deep Purple. And he approached me right when the first Vandenberg album wasn't even out, I think. It just came out around the time that he approached me for the first time. And it happened once or twice after that as well. And then at the end of '86, I said, well, this is the time, we work very easily together, Of course, it's his band, but I've always been his right-hand man in the band, and easy to, when you're rehearsing and David wouldn't be there or couldn't be there, whatever, I was taking care of rehearsals, and it worked both ways, because for me it was also relaxed when you run a band more or less together. In the end, David would usually make the final decision, but he would always listen to me, and I would listen to him, because you both want the best, So and it's the result that counts. It's the record that you're working on, the songs or the shows or whatever, and Dave and I are both very critical and very perfectionist. So, it works really great. I have great memories of that period. It was almost 13 years, so that's quite a while.
It
and
was.
Yeah, we're still in touch. It's all good. I'm really curious if I don't know what his plans are with Whitesnake at the moment, because I've been so busy with this release. So we haven't been in touch the last couple of weeks. So I don't know, but yeah, it's all good. I didn't have those problems that apparently some other former band members of Whitesnake had. They started whining in interviews and stuff, but I never had those problems. I suppose because I'm relaxed, about the whole thing. I think whatever works, and everybody should work towards the same result.
True. Well, you know what it's like when things are good in a band, everybody's happy. As soon as one thing goes wrong, those same people that were happy one minute want to turn against you the next. And you went through that with some of the past members of Vandenberg. I mean, I don't get it. Like, when David Lee Roth left Van Halen, he didn't say, I'm going to sue them for that name, the family name, because it was their band.
Yeah.
And when Richie Blackmore's members left Rainbow, they just said, well, I'm going to take Richie Blackmore's Rainbow and use it. What would make people think that a band named after you that you were in charge of, they have you're a band. You all contribute to it, absolutely, but you're the guy.
Yeah, it was very surrealistic when it happened to me, and it was about 11, 12 years ago. So it was 30 years after I disbanded my band to join Whitesnake. Um, by the way, a lot of people, sometimes I read comments where people go, yeah, he joined Whitesnake for the money. Well, it was the opposite because David was out of money at the time. He owed his record company a few million dollars or something, or a lot of money. There was no money. I didn't get paid. I didn't need to get paid because I always think, if you make great music, it's going to come sooner or later. And if it doesn't, at least you make great music. That's always how I look at music, So that was not the reason why I joined. I joined because I wanted to make great music and see where it goes,
One of the things that I think you've been blessed with in a way is that you've managed to work with some amazing singers over the years. When Manic Eden came out in the mid-90s, I think it was 94, 95, hard rock was kind of on its deathbed at that point in time. That record kind of revitalized everything for me. And Ron Young from Little Caesar, I think one of the best guys out there, doesn't get a lot of attention or what he deserves. I mean, then I think, like David Coverdale, even Bert from Vandenberg, I mean, was a great singer. All the shit that went on, he was still an amazing vocalist. And then Moon Kings and then the last Vandenberg with Ronnie Romero on vocals. I mean, you've picked some amazing singers, like, to accompany you on your music.
Yeah, I'm really fortunate with that. I'm very happy about it, too, It's because the songs I hear in my head when I'm writing and the vocal melodies that I come up with, there's not that many singers. Like Ron Young was a different story. The problem with him it wasn't really a problem, but we already recorded the songs, and normally I would have tailored them more to his voice. That's what I like to do, when I work with a specific singer. I definitely aim to get the best out of the particular vocalist within his range and within the kind of songs, So it was a little different with Manic Eden, but I'm still really, really happy with how the album turned out. And Ron did a fantastic job, singing songs that weren't really written towards him. So he's a great guy. We got along great. It was a pity I had to stop Manic Eden at the time because there was some other stuff going on and there was a whole tour planned. But I had obligations, so I couldn't do that tour, and it kind of fell apart. So yeah, that was a pity because I think it could have been great. But exactly like you said, it was in the middle of the grunge period.
Yeah.
So it would have been pretty hard to keep the band going anyway. It would take another bunch of years actually before people would actually go to this kind of rock again. And right now it seems to be really great actually. If I look at the United States, what's happening, there's all those 80s bands are touring again. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them. And doing well, and with Vandenberg, we played the Monster of Rock cruise twice now, and it's so much fun because everybody feels like they're 21 again or 18. Everybody's got a smile on their face. It's just a lot of fun.
It is. Whenever I hear the music, I do feel like I'm 18 again. Just the body keeps reminding me it's a lot older. So that's the problem.
Yeah.
The mind and the heart is there, just nothing else. But a couple of years ago, I hear that, we're going to get a new Vandenberg record. It's coming out. Like I said, Ronnie on vocals, your old friend Rudy on there with you, Brian Tishy on drums. You put a spectacular lineup together. Were you hoping that this was going to be the lineup of the new band, or were you just looking for guys to kind of record this record with?
No, I was actually... when I asked Rudy and Brian, that was because I didn't have a rhythm section together yet. So right before we started lay down the basic tracks, I found Koen and Randy. So they play most of the album. Rudy and Brian play on 3 songs. I can't actually remember which ones, but and the rest is played by Koen and Randy, who are also playing on the Sin album. Yeah, I always like to have a band feel in the band. I don't really like the revolving door principle, and yeah, that's one of the things that Whitesnake is known for, of course. But I'm always striving to keep a band together, and that's when I always think you make better stuff. It becomes more personal, and when you get on great with the guys, which is for me even more important than their musicianship, because when you go on tour, you see each other 24 hours a day. You better get on well, otherwise, there's going to be miserable people around. You don't want that.
Yeah. Well, with the new record, Sin, Matt is on vocals right now, and I think he kind of encompasses a little bit of everything you've done throughout your career musically. Like he can handle the vocals, I think, from like every different singer that you've had, make it his own, but yet make it sound like it should from the singers that did it originally. That's kind of a hard thing to do. I mean, did you know what you were getting when you kind of hooked up with Matt? Did you work with him before, or is it the first time?
No, I actually realized when I started looking for a replacement for Ronnie, I suddenly thought, oh, you know what? I'm gonna look back on a couple of guitar players from my era and from my generation and see who was singing with them. And suddenly, before I even started looking, I thought, oh, wait a minute. I remember this one singer that worked with Amy Malmsteen for one record. Um, and I remember he was great. So I looked him up, and it was Mats, and I called him up. And he was really excited. He said, man, when I read that you were starting Moon Kings, I was a bit disappointed because I really wanted to work with you. I said, how come? He says, well, when I was in my mid-20s, my mom brought the first two Vandenberg albums to Sweden for him because he couldn't find them in Sweden at the time, apparently. So he knows all the songs, and he was a fan. So it was a done deal right away. And like you say, he's one of those singers who can do it all. He does it. He really delivers on pretty difficult songs to sing, like "Still of the Night" and "Burning Heart." All the songs that I want to play. And when we come over to the States in February, March, and tour, we do about 26 dates. It's going to be quite Whitesnake heavy, the repertoire, because those were 13 years. So there's going to be some classic Vandenberg songs, of course, and some newer ones, and a lot of Whitesnake from the years that I was involved. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
It should be great. I think you're playing with Jeff Tate on a lot of those shows.
Yeah, exactly. We're starting with a couple of headline shows, and then we're joining Jeff. So it's a great double bill, I think, because on one hand our music is quite different. On the other hand, it really overlaps each other. So people are going to have a great night.
It's going to be fantastic. And just to touch on the artwork for the new record, because we've said, you're an artist. This album kind of like is a throwback in a way to Heading for a Storm. I mean, it kind of picks up where the artwork for that album left off.
Sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
I was saying for the new record, Sin, the artwork on the album cover, I mean, sort of a little reminiscent of Heading for a Storm. I mean, you kind of like, it's like a continuation of where, if it's a sequel to the artwork almost.
Yeah, exactly. That was the plan. I did the same with 2020 album. I reintroduced the logo because many people know it, so they would know what they could expect. With this one, I thought it would be great to make another painting in the style that I used to do in that period of my life. I haven't painted in that style since 1986. So I thought, it would be great. And then I had this idea for those sharks on Heading for a Storm album. Nobody knew where they were flying to, of course, because they're flying toward you over a desert. I thought, wouldn't it be great to let them fly into New York, the city of sin? And also, the second name of New York, of course, is the apple. So there you have the original sin with the snake and the apple. And I thought, that came together really nicely, So that's actually how it turned out.
See, that's how an artist would look at it. There's a whole story behind it and hitting meanings that other people might not catch on to. Did you ever think if you just stood with the art from the beginning, because you would involved in art, I think even before music probably, do you think you would have stood with it and maybe made that a career?
Painting, you mean?
Painting, yes.
Yeah, I did. In the years before Moon Kings, I stayed out of the business for about 10 years because I wanted to see my daughter grow up. When her mother and I split, my daughter was 3, and I thought, man, I don't want to be one of those dads who is on the road all the time and sticks his head around the corner twice a year, because she wasn't living with me. She lived with her mom ever since she was 3. So I wanted to be there for her, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to focus on painting for 10 years and take it from there, And that's what I did. So when I started Moon Kings, my daughter was about 12, so I could explain to her what I do and what I've always done, and she loves it. You know, we played the show in my hometown last weekend, and she was there, and I could see a smiling face, you know, in the middle of the crowd. So it was great. Yeah,
It's an amazing feeling.
Yeah, it was great, and I did really well on paintings. I did a lot of a bunch of exhibitions, and I have sold a lot over the internet. Actually, I have sent paintings to Australia and to South America and everywhere.
That's fantastic. Adrian, I'm not going to keep because I know you have interviews to do all afternoon over here. And the album just came out about a week ago, August 25th. I mean, our mascot, what an amazing job you did in this record. I can't wait for the next one, and I'm going to see you when you get to New York I think it's next fall.
Yeah, man, it'd be great. It'd be great to shake hands. So tell our mascot people that you're in the house, and we'll shake some hands. Great.
I will.
Excellent.
You take care, Adrian. Have a great day. Thanks for all the music.
Thanks, man. You too.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.
You like the night, just thunder and lightning.
brand new Vandenberg, Thunder and Lightning. I think Adrian hit a home run with this record. If you haven't picked it up yet, go ahead and get yourself a copy. It's always great when you have a guest that's talkative. That's always been one of the issues with the show. Is like you never know who you're going to get. Some guests will talk a lot, some guests won't talk at all. And back in the early days, when a guest kind of froze up but didn't talk about anything or just gave like yes and no answers, I didn't know where to go with it. I was new with doing interviews myself, so things just kind of fell awry after a while. As the years went on, I got better at trying to get them to talk and elaborate on things or changing the subject and bringing it back to it. Sometimes you have to overpraise a guest, a little bit to get him, comfortable in talking. It happens. But then you have people that have done this for years. And they know exactly what to say and how to say it. They know how to do interviews. Like D. Snyder. There was nothing you could throw at that guy that he would have come back with a lengthy response on because he's done it for so many years that it's like second nature to them. And there are just people that are very talkative like that. And I think over the years, some of the best interviews we had were guys that kind of interviewed themselves. Jeff Waters from Annihilator was definitely one of those guests. All I said was hello, and Jeff kind of interviewed himself. Sissy Space K, he was another guy. That interview went on for almost 2 hours long. He would just go on and you say one thing to him and he would talk for like 25 minutes about it. And you got to love guests like that when they talk like that. A few hours, maybe a month or two ago, we had Claude Snell on here. Claude Snell, we only spoke, we spoke for 90 minutes. We ran out of time on the show. I couldn't talk anymore. Otherwise, we could have went on for maybe 3 or 4 hours. And he was so informative. And you have to love guests that are like that, And Mantis, a couple of months back, we had Mantis on the show from Venom and Venom Inc. Very talkative guy. We spoke for about an hour and a half also. And when I had Kronos on many years ago, too, he was another guy that was very talkative. We spoke for over an hour, too. So I got to get Abaddon on here and see if we can do the whole trifecta of the original Venom crew and talking. But, interviews like that are great. Then I remember we had Heather Ledger on here, all 3 sisters. 3 of the sweetest girls you'll ever want to know. But it's like everything was pre-programmed with them. You would ask them a question, and it was almost like they had things written down. Like in case you asked them about this, they had a pre-programmed answer for it. All 3 of them answered at the same time. That was the funny part, because, I don't write any questions down when I do interviews. I don't prepare anything. All of these bands from the 70s, 80s I grew up with, I know everything I need to know about them. So, I could just talk to them about the days and the times and the records and the demos and everything I mentioned to them. The 3 of them responded at the same time. It was funny. When we were done with the interview, Tommy and I were, because Tommy was on the show that day calling in, and we were talking about something else, and he said, fuck them, but he was talking about the person that we were talking about during that little segment. It wasn't the band, and I remember they emailed me so upset that they thought we cursed at them. And I said, no, go back and listen. We didn't curse at you girls. We were just talking about something else. And, honestly, I think maybe I cursed on the show maybe 3 times in the whole 15 years I'm doing it. Tommy had a potty mouth, and he said something. But that's just the way Tommy was. And I remember, one time with Tommy, we were interviewing Herman Rearbell. I don't remember what he was promoting. It was something with a solo record. Herman Rearbell and Friends, I think he was doing at the time. And Tommy wanted to, Tommy called and he wanted to ask a couple of questions. So we did the interview together. And no, I'll do the main interview and Tommy will come in and talk and ask a couple of questions of stuff he's personally wanted to hear about. And when he was done, he said, okay, thank you and goodbye. So Herman thought the interview was over and he hung up. And I got so mad at Tommy. I was like, why did you say that? The guy ended the interview. But that's the way things go sometimes, And I remember we had James Kotak on the show, early on, after maybe 2 or 3 years of doing the show, I kept saying, we got to get some A-list guest on here, because that'll bring a lot of people to the show. We'll get more listeners that way. And I remember working on Iron Maiden, the Scorpions, Metallica, Judas Priest, trying to get them on the show, right into management. And, we're a little internet show. A lot of those bands don't deal with that. So I happened to find out who was doing press for Judas Priest at the time. And I reached out to him saying, I want to have, the band on the show. And that's when it was almost all the original lineup. Scott was on drums, but KK was in the band. Glenn, Ian, Rob was back in the group. So I didn't care who I got. I just wanted to get somebody on from Judas Priest. So I was like, yeah, okay, we'll work on it. We'll let you know. That's the famous answer, for blowing you off. So then I get a call from that press person about a week later. He goes, well, you know what? I have these other bands I need interviews. Maybe you could do them while we're waiting to see what happens with Priest. And that's how they do it. When you want that one good artist that they represent, they hit you up with 100 other bands that you don't know anything about, really don't have any name in the business, not even sometimes heavy metal. They were alternative rock bands, hardcore bands. I love hardcore, so I didn't care. But so I started doing all these interviews, and I couldn't even air most of them because they weren't bands that I could put on the show, So we were doing them. Then we were getting a lot of in-person interviews. So Tommy used to love doing the in-person interviews because you go either to the record label in the city or a hotel, and there's food, and you eat and you're drinking, and you're interviewing the band in person. Sometimes you get a lot of swag and stuff. So Tommy, and I worked him in hand, so I was always there at night anyway. So Tommy would come join me and meet me, and we would do all these interviews. So like after about 8 or 9 months of doing this, I called up the press person for Judas Priest. I said, listen, I've been a good sport. I've done this now for almost a year. I've interviewed every band you've thrown at me. It's time to get me Rob Halford. So like a week later, he calls up and says, Rob could do it on this Friday at 5 o'clock, and that's it. I said, okay, great. And I remember that was the only time we did a show that wasn't on Sunday night. We did a special show on Friday because I wanted to do a live show with Rob Halford, not a recorded one, because I wanted to do everything live back then. And, we advertised, and a lot of people calling and asking questions, and it was a great interview, and I loved that show. I was a little nervous when I interviewed somebody as big as that, but it was great. Then after that, we wound up getting, everybody in the show, and I wound up working with that guy up until today, and he's gotten us so many interviews, and, I really appreciate him and everything Chip has done for me over the years. The same with Muncie and Dustin and Nate and all these other people I've worked with. They've done a great job of supplying me with these A-list guests, and I really do appreciate everything that they do for us here on the show. But I just remember that's what it was like. Same thing with the Scorpions. I wanted to do the Scorpions. Like, well, we have James Kotak available. I'm like, all right, I'll talk to James Kotak. But I really wanted to talk to Klaus Meyer and Rudolf Schenker or Matthias Shams, one of those classic or original members of the band. We had James on the show, and he was promoting his band Kotak, and he had his wife on there, Athena Lee, who was Tommy Lee's sister. So we got a little stupid with her, asking about her brother's porno and everything. But they got a kick out of it. They had a good sense of humor. And I remember James invited us to see the band and come backstage at the Scorpions show when they played in New Jersey. It was on their final tour when they were supposed to retire. And I remember that was like the first time we really ever went backstage, like a big show, like like an A-list band at an arena. And Tom and I didn't know what to do with ourselves. Like we were behind the stage when Cinderella was opening up, and it was great, standing 5 feet away from them. And that's one of the things I love about doing the show is that being a kid in the early '80s and becoming fans of all of these bands and loving these albums and these demo tapes. 30 years later, 40 years later, I'm best friends. Actually best friends with a lot of these bands now. Being such a big Abattoir fan back in the day, Steve Gaines and I have become such great friends over the years. We talk all the time. It's been like that with a lot of people that I keep in touch with on a regular basis. Jeff Scott Soto. I don't want to drop names. I'll sound like Eddie Trunk, but that was one of the great things about doing this show is meeting all these people in person. I've gotten to interview Thin Lizzy and Saxon and so many people in person. That was great. I remember one time Tom and I went to a hotel in Manhattan to go meet Biff Byford and Doug Scarrett to go interview them. I forgot what record came out. We were going to talk to them and had the bar area closed off for the people doing interviews. And we were the last ones of the day because I worked at the night shift in Manhattan. So I said, I'll do it when I get in at nighttime so I don't have to make a special trip to the city. And, Tommy brought in all his sacks and stuff to get autographed. He had his fan club newsletter from 1978 with him, and he brought it in. I'm trying to interview Biff, and him and I are talking, and Doug is at the table talking with Tommy. And I remember Tommy getting scolded by Biff because he was talking too loud during the interview and throwing him off. And Tommy's like, I apologize. But they signed everything for him, and Tommy sat there quiet for the next 45 minutes while I did the interview. And it's great stuff like that we enjoy the show for and doing it. All right, let's do our demolition segment. Let's get that out of the way right now. This is a band called Future Tense. I think I bought their first demo. I'm going to do Future Tense and then Anger right after. Anger, I know I bought their demo. I still have it in my collection. I remember waiting 6 weeks for that to come over from Europe. And I'm pretty sure I bought the first Future Tense demo, Protect Your Ears. These guys were great, and I loved them. And I've tried over the years to get them on the show. I've had no luck at all, but I think Ryan Sheck, the guitar player, had a band called Yosh. And they just re-released all those records and looking to do press on it. So I'm going to see if he's the one doing the interviews. I'm going to try to get him on here. And we'll start out talking with that. And then we'll jump right into the Future Tense stuff because I love those 2 tapes in the band back in the day. So let's get on. Go to Hell off their first demo. Here you go.
Turn around, slam like everywhere we scroll. You only need some glance to run into the world.
Running Wild, Adrian, Son of Satan. Before that, Anger, Victim of Power. And before that, Future Tense with our Demolition segment with Go to Hell. We're going to get to U.D.O in a little bit, try to get on a few more songs before we do talk to him. And his son Sven is supposed to call in with him also. So we should have both Dirkschnieders on here tonight if all goes well. How about we do some more music right now? You know what? I think it was 2011 we did a third intro for the show. Reached out to Chuck one more time, said, give me something with Diamond Head, and he took a Diamond Head song, Am I Evil, because he only knew that from Metallica, and made an intro for us. We only used this for a couple of months, if even that. I think it was like maybe 2 months, and that was all we ever used this intro for, but here you go.
The Heavy Metal Mayhem Radio Show. Live on blogtalkradio.com. Heavy metal, the way it was meant to be. And now, the moment has arrived. The wait is over. It's time for the best heavy metal and hard rock anywhere. Please join me in welcoming your host, Mike, the Big Cheese.
All right, I kind of like that one, but you know, everything was specific to Blog Talk Radio. If I would have thought about it back then, I would have said just leave that out. Because whoever thought I would have left Blog Talk Radio after like 12 or 13 years, but it happened. All right, let's get back to the music right now. Here's out of Florida, August, Down the Motorway.
Can you feel the power coming from me?
classic old school Virgin Steel Guardians of the Flame. When you listen to the new stuff and you listen to that, you realize what a big difference there is in the sound of that band over the last 3 decades. All right before that, Paradox, We Are the Temple. That song comes off the band's first demo. First off, there were like 9 bands named Paradox, all from the mid-'80s. This band was out of San Antonio, Texas, and I think they were like a Christian metal band. But that was a really high-quality demo tape for back in the early 80s. I mean, it actually sounds like a record. And they were a pretty good band. First time I heard them, I thought it was a female singer in the group until I got a little info on them, and then I realized it was a guy. I'm going to try to reach out to them, maybe get them on the show, see if they want to come on and talk about the early days of that band. All right, let's do one more of the old intros. You know, I've been tripping down memory lane all week with the show being on 15 years, and this one was the 2001 Space Odyssey theme, kind of mixed in with some talking. So let's play that, and then from there we'll go right into some old accept. Well, not old accept, but like mid accept. And then we'll talk to U.D.O and Sven.
Heavy metal, the way it was meant to be. Classic 80s underground. Live on blogtalkradio.com, the Heavy Metal Mayhem Radio Show. With your host, Mike the Big Cheese.
Hello?
Udo, this is Mike. How are you?
Yeah, fine. Thank you very much. I'm fine.
I'm doing great. I have no video. It's just audio for the radio, so it doesn't matter.
Okay. No problem.
Uh,
But I don't know if Sven can join us. I mean, I'm not sure, But
okay.
anyway, but we can do it also
Yeah,
alone.
absolutely, of course. And listen, such a big fan going back to the early Accept days. I can't believe this is number 18 when it comes to the U.D.O albums.
Okay. Perfect.
Oh, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. I'm
Okay, yeah,
there.
the video went out. That was all okay. Yeah, 18 albums. Can you believe 18 albums already?
Yeah, in a way, just 19 already.
19. Sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't count the new one. Touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the touchdown. I think it's a really good album. I mean, I'm really happy, and so far the reaction is fantastic.
It has been, but you never disappoint. I mean, every one of your albums, people know what they're going to get. They're going to get great heavy metal, and you deliver with every album and every song.
Yeah, I mean, something is also different with this album. Not completely different, but on this album, we also, yeah, we put some modern stuff on there here and there and different arrangements. So it was very interesting to work on this album.
And a great thing about it is that Peter is playing with you now officially in U.D.O. I mean, I had Peter on my show a few months ago, and he kind of mentioned it, but we didn't let it go until it was announced. It's got to be a good feeling because he said that playing with U.D.O again, it was fun. It was a good time. I enjoyed it. It wasn't like when I was playing with Accept the last few years.
Oh, yeah, okay. I don't want to say anything about accepting.
Of
This is
course.
up to Peter. Yeah, no, I mean, it's a lot of fun to play with Peter again. He's really enjoyed, yeah, to be in a band. He feels really comfortable. And he said, okay, I mean, he was not involved in songwriting, but he was playing the bass on this album. And also Peter has his own style of playing. And yeah, so we said, okay, feel free. And also what he did with the bass lines, I mean, it's like they gave the whole thing another push. So, and yeah, with Peter, I mean, for me, it's like he never went away. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's so much fun. And for me, it's also good to see that he has fun now. And he was a little bit depressed. I know that. I mean, and so now he's really getting, yeah, I don't know. He's really like, wow, when I was listening to the songs, I mean, this is really also a little bit different, more progressive, and this and this and this. And I said, yeah, I mean, we always try to do something different. And so here we go. I mean, I'm really happy to have him back, and yeah, looking forward for the future.
That's going to be great. Well, you guys were working together on Dirkschnieder and the old gang, and then
Yes.
Tillin had gotten sick, and he was in the hospital, and Peter filled in. At that point in time, did you know that you might need him in the band full time after that, or was it still Tillin trying to come back?
No, I mean, we did already working also on the We Are One album, that was with German army forces, and
Yeah.
so, I mean, uh, we came back, let's say, on these two projects more closer. But it was normally not planned that he become a member of U.D.O. That was the thing. I tried to make it short. um, so we was on the Game Over tour, and our bass player Thielen on the second show in Munich. He has a really big health problem. He was nearly dying, what we heard afterwards. And but he never told us about his sickness, blah blah blah. Anyway, so and on the Game Over tour, I mean, after the whole pandemic stuff, we didn't want to cancel we don't want to cancel the tour, and then we would say, okay, we have to find somebody who can help us out as long Thielen is recovered. So, and then I said, yeah, I think the guy who can do that very quick is Peter. So, and then we called him, and then we explained what happened, and then he said, "Yes, of course, I will do that. I'll help you out." So, and then in the middle of the tour, I think it was in South America, we get an email from our bass player, Thielen. He doesn't want to be in the band anymore. Don't ask me why. I never get really an answer about this. But okay, um, and then yeah, we were sitting down in the evening in a restaurant, and we said, now we have to look for a new bass player. And then Peter came up and said, "Yeah, I would love to join the band." And I said, "Hey, Peter, are you sure?" "Yeah," and he said, "Yes. It's so much fun here, and it's so much different what I had before, blah, blah, blah." And then, yeah, now he's the member of U.D.O.
And that's great for all of us because I feel like, we have that core lineup of the old days back again. And, Udo, when you think about it, whether it's Animal House, Holy, Dominator, even up to Touchdown, you've been very consistent with your music. I mean, we know what we're going to get, and you're going to deliver the goods every time. Does it get harder and harder as the years go on to come up with new material that sounds like it's supposed to sound, but yet is kind of new?
No, I mean, I think, we never went out of ideas. I mean, already I know that the guitar players, including now Peter, they are working already on some stuff. We are constantly working on songs. And that, I think, we never get out of any ideas. And also lyric-wise, I mean, it's also easy going. We just write lyrics about what's happening in the world, what is around us every day. You just put the news on, and you have already tons of idea. What kind of lyrics you can write.
True. So many musicians and bands that have been around for the amount of time you have since the 70s. There's ups and downs in music. Heavy metal
Oh yeah.
comes and goes, hard rock comes and goes, and they kind of change their sound to fit into what's going on so they can be relevant. You just keep delivering the same Udo stuff over and over again. You don't care what's going on in the rest of the world. You're going to give us Udo every time.
Yeah, I mean, that was, especially in the 90s, when all this grunge music was there. I mean, a lot of bands, they said, we have to change our style a little bit to be more like this and blah, blah, blah. And I never did this. I said, no, I don't want to do that. I have my own thing going on. And of course, metal was going at this time in the 90s a little bit down, but then exploding again. So, and I mean, I get this. I hear this very often from some journalists. They say, "Yes, you were staying to your roots. What the kind what you always do, stay to metal." So that's what I did.
Yeah, you definitely stuck to your guns and you kept it going, which was a great thing because when people couldn't find it anywhere else, we knew we could count on you for that. And now that it's come back again, it seems like you're bigger than ever. And then, you had the Dirkschnieder going on a few years ago where you're going out
Yes.
doing all the Accept stuff. And you've kind of separated the two into two different, bands doing two different things. But people are always going to want to hear Accept, even with the U.D.O stuff. But it seems like
Yes.
this year you've just given them U.D.O because you have so much to draw from.
Yeah, I mean, what we are doing now with Dirkschnieder, we play this if they ask us. I mean, that's especially for festivals. And then if they come up and say, "Oh, can you come under Dirkschnieder?" Then we say, "Yes, why not? No problem. We don't have a problem with that." But with U.D.O, it's a completely different story now. The good thing is now that the people know, or that, yeah, they know when we come under U.D.O, there is no Accept songs. And if we come under Dirkschnieder, they hear the whole hit jukebox of songs, of Accept. So, I mean, it's good to do this. And I know with Peter, I mean, it's in a way the half of Accept is on stage.
Sure.
And so, I mean, it's, no problem at all. I mean, also the rest of the band, they like to play all this Accept stuff. They grow up with this, and yeah, what can I say? I mean, it's good to have these both things going on.
It is, and I don't understand why people like they make such an issue out of it. They were like, well, U.D.O said he was going to go out there and just do it one final time, but it became really big. So how can you
Uh,
walk? How can you walk away from that when it's doing so well? It's impossible in the music business to walk away. Plus, Accept was the beginning of your career, the first part of your
yes.
musical life. So how do you just forget about it?
No, the rumors also came up when we had this album Game Over, and the people thought, oh, it's the Game Over. This is maybe the last tour what Udo is doing, or what, so on and on. No, but why we called this album Game Over was, during the pandemic time, everything was over. You couldn't go to a restaurant, you couldn't see your family. It was also impossible to be in one room and start working on songs and stuff like that. That's why we say, okay, everything is game over at the moment, and that's why we call the album Game Over.
Those 2 3 years with the pandemic were a real struggle for a lot of bands. I mean, yeah, they
Oh, yeah.
created music, they put stuff out, but let's be honest, you have to play live, to make money and to stay relevant. So it was
Oh,
really
yeah.
tough. I mean, how many bands survived this beyond me?
Yeah, let's say we are in a quite lucky situation, the thing was my company getting money from the government, that was something going on here in really nice in Germany. And so that was not, I don't want to say easy, but it was possible to survive, And of course, we did in between. We did Dirkschnieder and the Old Gang. So all the money from this was going to the band of U.D.O. I mean, not me, but the rest of the band, and also to our crew. They had no jobs, nothing was going on. That was really a charity thing what we did with Dirkschnieder and the Old Gang. So, and then of course I get money from the record company for Game Over and stuff like that. So let's say for me, I think I was lucky, but I know a lot of young bands, and so they cannot survive, and still it's like something, it's not over business wise, everything is so expensive now at the moment. And for young bands, I think that it's not so easy to survive.
It's not. People think it's like in the old days when a young bunch of young people are starting out and they could jump into a car or a van and just travel around with a few dollars in their pocket. It's not like
Hmm.
that. There's a lot of expenses traveling today. I mean, the price of gas and oil, and it's. I know
Oh,
you.
yeah.
I remember hearing you were supposed to come to America, I guess in November, but I don't think that's happening, right?
Yeah, that will be happening. The first show is on the 3rd of November in New Jersey. So, and then we are touring nearly until the middle of December. And yeah, we do also United States and Canada. I'm really looking forward to come back, I mean, the last time I've been in the United States was with Dirkschnieder, and now we are coming over with U.D.O. But there's very funny. I mean, there is one thing. The promoters came up and said, "Yeah, we heard U.D.O. doesn't play any Accept songs anymore. Um, but in America, without balls to the wall, this is a little bit strange. Is that possible? Maybe you can play that." I said, yeah, I know. I mean, in America, to play in America without boards is a little bit strange. So that will be definitely on the set list, board to the wall, definitely.
Well, that's great, but as a fan of both bands and being around since both bands, came to be, I mean, I'm fine with just hearing a whole UDO set because, I know all the albums and I love the music like most fans do, but the promoters seem to have a lot of pull on what you have to do sometimes to make a show happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, in the end, I always say give the people what they want. And I mean, it's like, especially in America, here in Europe is a different situation, also in South America. But in America, I mean, balls is a huge, yeah, hit, I mean, everybody knows balls to the wall. And definitely they want to hear that. And maybe we do another song, but not more. And then the rest is definitely completely UDO, So it's, I think, yeah, give the people what they want.
Sure. Well, I remember when you came here with Dirk Schneider and you played in Manhattan in New York City at the Gramercy Theater, and I
Hmm.
waited for you to come on, and the first song when I heard you sing, I was like, he hasn't lost anything in his voice in the last, 30 or 40 years. It was amazing because, when you see videos and stuff like that, they could be doctored up. And when you come out live, I was blown away at how you sound. And I know you always say you don't really do anything to practice or work on your voice. It's just, you just have it. It's just natural.
Yeah, I mean, I do nothing special. The only thing I did 20 years ago, I stopped smoking. But I think I'm really lucky with my voice. I never was cancel a show about that I had my voice was gone or something like that. And I don't know. I mean, I think I'm really lucky with that. And yeah, so I mean, hopefully for a couple more years.
That'll be great. Udo, I'm not going to keep. I know you're doing interviews today. We didn't get to talk to Sven, but maybe the next time. But I will be in New Jersey in November to see you live. It'll probably be the 15th time I've seen you over the last few decades, and I can't wait. It's always a great show.
Okay.
You take care, my friend. Have a great night.
Okay, you too. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Creature of the night,
school Savage Grace, the Dominatrix. If you haven't picked up the brand new Savage Grace record, please go out and do so. It's a really solid album. That kind of brings you back, to the early 80s and sort of late 80s, what they were doing when they came to New York. It's a good mix of both, so pick yourself up a copy of that. All right. Well, we got about 15, 20 minutes left. We'll do a couple of more songs. We'll wrap it up here tonight. Like I said, it's been a great 15 years, and I want to thank everybody for going along for this ride with me. I can't thank Iman and John enough for always being here in the chat room every week, keeping me company, making me laugh. Eddie, thanks for coming back. Christian's been sending me some great requests every week, and we're going to get on one tonight, probably at the end of the set. He wanted to hear Saint Plan 2, so we'll get that on after a couple of more tunes. And then we're going to wrap it up here tonight. So we had one more intro before Tommy, our former part-time semi-here co-host and my best friend, guitar player extraordinaire from Tempest, New York, wrote our latest theme song, which we've been using for the last 7 years. It features my old guitar player, Mike, from Stillborn on rhythm guitar, our good old friend from the days in the neighborhood, Ron Dyer, on bass, our original guitar player in Stillborn, Andy Guyder, who left to go play drums with Super Touch and Altercation and a few other bands back in the day. He played drums and recorded in his studio in Queens. And the master, Bobby Leatherlungs Lucas from Attacker, on vocals. I can't thank those guys enough for putting that theme song together for us. But this was the last one. Before that, it was, what did we do here with this one? I think it was a classic song we did, like an opera song or something. La Fortuna or something, I think it was. I don't remember. We had so many songs over the years. But here's one more theme song, and then we'll jump into the next set of music.
Underground, the Heavy Metal Mayhem radio show with your host, Mike, the Big Cheese.
mercy for the devil, no mercy for the foe. The king will wad him up, throw him away, and cast him to the rocks of never-ending scorn. This shall all take place, sure as you hear me say. Burn the dam, you'll burn the beast on that white throne day. All will hear the cry, the evil one will die, forever shedding tears of pain. Let's give glory to the King. He conquered death and hell to set his children free. Let's give glory to the King. He cleansed us from our sins, he tasted death for all to see. Disaster, it controls the heart and hearts of men, providing them with pride and despair. But he's the King of all that lives and that breathes. Yes, he's the Lord of lords, his judgments are all fair. He burned the dam, he burned the beast on that white throne day. All will hear the cry, the evil one will die, forever shedding tears of pain. Let's give glory to the King. He conquered death and hell to set his children free. Yeah, let's give glory to the King. He cleansed us from our sins, he tasted death for all to see. plain for all to see. He is the risen king. He has the keys to death and hell attached onto his side. He will burn the damned, he will burn the beast on that white throne day. All will hear the cry, the evil one will die, forever shedding tears of pain. Let's give glory to the king. He conquered death and hell to set his children free. Yeah, let's give glory to the king. He cleansed us from our sins. He tasted death for all to see. Let's give glory to the king. Now the devil's hands are tied and none of us will have to die. Let's give glory to the king. Let's give glory to the king.
There you go, Saint, Plan 2. Christian wanted to hear that? You got it. All right, we're going to wrap it up here tonight. One more song to go. 15 years under my belt. I can't thank you guys enough for being a part of it. I've said it a million times and I'll say it again. Iman, John, thank you every week for coming into the chat and making me laugh and keeping me entertained. I do appreciate it, you guys. And I'm glad that Eddie is back with us every now and then, and everybody else that tunes in and listens throughout the world. I do appreciate it very, very much. Thank you, and I'm hoping that there's another 15 years if God gives me that long to live, so we'll keep it going for as long as we can, but thank you guys. All right, I want to thank Adrian Vandenberg and U.D.O. Dirkschnieder. Sven was trying to call in if you heard the beeping. I just couldn't connect him. I felt if I did, I would have lost U.D.O., so we didn't do it, but things like that happen sometimes. Hey, next week, Kurt Krause from Dementia will be our guest. Don't forget to tune in. One guest. It's been a long time since we had just one guest on the show, so we will get to a lot of music next week, but thank you, everybody, for the last 15 years. I appreciate it. I love you all very much. Thank you for giving this kid from Brooklyn a shot to make music for you every week. I do appreciate that. How about we wrap it up here tonight with one of the first guests we've had on the show, like we said before, Mike Sabatini of Attacker. Let's do Disciple off that first classic record, and that'll be it for us. Take care, everybody. Have a great night. I'll see you next week.
Children stand Brian Ross from Blitzkrieg, and you're listening to the Heavy Metal Mayhem Radio Show.
How you doing out there, animals? This is Brian Vollmer from the band Helix, and you're listening to the Heavy Metal Mayhem Radio Show. Dig it.
Mike, I raise my fists to the success of the Heavy Metal Mayhem Radio Show. You are making metal great again.